You hit go live?
Yeah.
Welcome to Evangelicalish, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the American evangelical church, deconstruction, faith, and God's love through it all. And make sure and stay current on ish happenings on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Evangelicalish. That's evangelical with an ish. Now to Paul, Jeremy, and April on this episode of Evangelical-ish. Welcome to
Evangelicalish. Super glad that you guys are here this evening. Y'all are here. A little bit more inclusive term. Also, one of my favorites being from here in the South. I'm Jeremy.
I'm April.
I'm Paul.
And it's so good to see each and every single one of you on the live stream tonight. And thank you for those who are listening. If you are already subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We are super grateful for that. That helps our content so much. If you're not, go ahead and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, tune in, whatever. And then do us a favor, go leave a review, 5 stars. And then on Spotify and Apple in particular, if you could just write a review and tell people why they should listen. It is week 2 of having the one, the only, the myth and the legend, April Joy, back in on the co-host seat. So we're super glad that you're back, April.
Listen, the devil tried to keep me down. Gave me strep throat on Monday.
Yes. Yeah.
But Jesus came through with that steroid shot at the urgent care yesterday. And
Jesus with that modern medicine, huh?
I'm feeling.
We
like
rebuke that spiritual attack. We rebuke that. We rebuke that stress.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So, also, if you get a chance, go to evangelicalish.com. You can subscribe there, $4.99. There's a private message board, things like that. Just good ways to connect with the community. It's really fantastic, and it just supports the content that we're putting out. It just helps us continue to do the work that we're doing, bringing you episodes each and every single week. I think this is episode like 88 or something like that.
I know, we're getting so close to 100 episodes, which
we
is
have
crazy.
to do something cool with 100, I think. And I mean, we need to start brainstorming it. It's probably going to be more toward the end of the year. But super excited about that as we enter into the summer and all the things that happen with the summer. It's a busy time, folks traveling. If you'll notice, Paul's got a little bit different background behind him tonight, and April's background will be changing soon, as we've mentioned here on the show. But $4.99 a month, evangelicalish.com. Go support the podcast if you haven't already. There's also some backlog content that you can check out, some private episodes and some behind the scenes stuff that you'll love. And you know, we could potentially be bringing that stuff back, but this season has just been so busy for the three of us, and in particular April, who's writing a New York Times bestseller as we speak. And so, I mean, listen,
the pre-sales are through.
Don't add the pressure.
No, it's not pressure. It's just facts. And listen, if we were like Mark Driscoll, we would have a church that would buy like 100,000 copies real fast to get you pushed out there. But unfortunately, we're not. I was in Seattle this week, and by the way, shout out to Yakima, the community there. The Pride Fest was amazing. Got a chance to spend time with those amazing Central Washington folks. But I was in Seattle, and I just thought it was fit. Like on my drive from the airport and back, it was like a 2-hour drive to the place that I was connecting with this community in Yakima. And I re-listened to Rise and Fall of Mars Hill in Seattle.
Just for funsies, just
to because you drive past things that you hear about like in the podcast, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that reminds me. And so it just hit just a little bit different, like, you know, kind of seeing those spaces. And so also got to hang out with some of our TikTok friends, in particular Evangelical, Zenial. Some of y'all follow her on TikTok. Stephanie is amazing. But anyway, glad that April's back. Glad that Paul was able to make it tonight in his travels, his walkabout to Southern California. And so anyway, that's enough of the housekeeping for tonight. And we got a lot to talk about this week.
So much.
To Paul in the chat, I'm not in some random entryway. I'm in my daughter's apartment in West Hollywood, which is not only known as the home for the Hollywood Bowl, but also the world's largest Doc Martens store. So that's
wow.
so that may be a place where we're happening by tomorrow.
They've had a big comeback in the last, probably 2 years. Like people are rocking the docks again, and a lot of people, because they're so well made, getting their docks out from like the 90s, just polishing them right back up and fitting right in. So you got to love it when it's coming back around, but it makes me feel old that like styles are like swinging back that I remember in my real life.
Yeah. And they're so comfortable to wear right off the bat. But yeah, this store has them like floor to ceiling. It's crazy. So I may just go in there to smell the leather tomorrow or something. But
I love this for you.
Yes. So name every president that has been federally indicted after their term. Quick.
Oh, it's going to take a long time to list them all. It's so normal.
I got to go through the list. What are we at? 46 now? I think we're just at 1, aren't we?
Or we're at 45 or 19 for some Trump followers.
19.
They believe he's just the 19th president legally. But yes, I used to have a wonderful trivia question of name the president who was impeached, and people would always say Richard Nixon, but no, Nixon resigned. He wasn't impeached. It was Bill Clinton was the only president impeached until the last president we had, who was impeached twice and has now been indicted on state charges in New York and federal charges in Washington, D.C. And watching the twister being played by Christians to defend their unwavering fealty to this guy is beyond belief. But the title of our show was Bad Things Can Happen in the Bathroom, particularly if there's a chandelier in there.
Bad things happen in the bathroom. And
classified, not classy.
Classified, not classy. We started playing with like bathroom jokes for the title tonight. April finally came through with a really good. You mentioned it was a Bob's Burgers song, which we really
bad
like.
Stuff happens. Bad stuff happens in the bathroom. It's a whole song.
Yeah.
By the way, I think I just made a mistake. Clinton was not impeached either. It was Johnson. It was Abraham Lincoln's vice president was the only president ever impeached. Was it? Clinton
was
impeached. That's right.
He just wasn't removed from office. So impeachment does not mean
it means you're charged.
It means you're charged, but it means the Senate holds a trial. Clinton was impeached, but he was found not guilty.
Not guilty in the Senate. You're right.
The definition of it is the word that Clinton used to get off.
Yes.
And so, but yes, Trump impeached twice inside of his term. Also found, and we have to say it just for historical context, he was found not guilty twice by the Senate, but a Republican-led Senate both times. So I think he was not found guilty on the January 6th charges that were brought against him just out of convenience of who was in the Senate at the time. If it had been a Democrat-led Senate, I think he would have been charged. But
100%.
Yeah. So, but since his term, he has been indicted by grand juries 2 different times. One for, I believe the first one was like, it was a sexual misconduct trial, right?
It was the hush money,
hush money,
lying about the money.
Yeah. And then the one that happened this week, and we're going to dive off into some more of the Don.
Yeah. This one is a doozy. Like, if you actually read the indictment, this is serious stuff. Like, they've got evidence. This is criminal. Like, he actually did it. I mean, not that it's funny. It's not funny. It's kind of funny. But like, he did stuff you're not supposed to do. And the beautiful poetic irony in it all is that I'm pretty sure he instated, after he was elected, like harsher punishments for classified documents because of Hillary's emails.
Yes.
Remember how they used to chant, "Lock her up," because she had classified emails on her laptop, which she turned over immediately and complied and all of these things. But because of those harsher punishments now he's facing harsher, potential threats of his crimes that he did, and he did way worse.
As with the case of Richard Nixon, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. So people are here saying, well, Pence did it and Biden did it. No, they didn't. They were found to have documents that didn't belong to them, belonged to the American people, and they immediately gave them back, cooperated with the National Archives to make sure they didn't have any more. Donald Trump, on the other hand, kept them in his bathroom, worked on ways to have his lawyers lie for him. His lawyers have even quit. He didn't even have a Florida attorney for the indictment today because his attorneys in Florida have quit and he didn't have time to find another. So this is more than what we've seen with others, and it's a witch hunt, says everybody. This is some of our most highly held secrets by a clown that I think just likes, he may be selling them to foreign powers, who knows, to the Saudis or somebody.
Maybe.
But I think in some ways he just likes to be able to go to Kid Rock and go, look, I have classified documents. Aren't I cool? Look.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be seeing these, but here they are.
It honestly feels like it could be that petty. Like, it's not that deep. It's just like, I don't want to give them back. They're mine. They're cool. I don't know why you need to keep that many boxes of them, though.
Well, because every single case or issue is probably a box or two worth, like multiple boxes worth. I think it's probably, a fair number of different events that are happening in, behind the scenes for the federal government. But, you got to remember, like when they write a bill and they pass it in Congress, these things are, hundreds of pages long and very deep and expansive. And so I think he probably has, obviously a handful of things that are very important to the American people. But the fact that, the pictures coming out of Mar-a-Lago are scary for him to be shoving them in bathrooms and things like that in classified boxes is just absolutely insane. And like you were saying, April, they absolutely carry a heavier price now that he was, obviously trying to catch Hillary Clinton. One of his first things that really got people excited about him after the primaries in the general election was in that first debate with Hillary Clinton. And she was talking about something and he spouted off, well, you'd be in jail, and people just clung on to that. And that was where the lock her up thing came from. But at the end of the day, he is facing 20 to 25 years of federal jail time because of the classified documents that he withheld from the National Archives.
So, like, logistically, moving forward, do y'all think that the trial will move quickly enough to where it'll happen before the 2024 election?
I think they'll delay.
So then, hypothetically, if he's the Republican nominee and then he become in like a nightmare situation, he's elected president, they would have to delay. You can't criminally charge a sitting president, right? Aren't those the rules?
That is not the rules.
That's not the rules?
That's a tradition.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's not a rule.
It is. So to be fair, it is kind of in the middle of those things.
Okay.
It is considered an unwritten rule that you don't indict a president while he's in office. But it is not a law on the books. So that is not
correct.
That is not something that is actually legal by any stretch. It's kind of like if one team beans a batter, the next team is going to bean another one, on their side. It's those unwritten rules that people have played by for centuries. But I read a statement this week that it was like, Hunter Biden could be doing cocaine lines off of copies of Hillary Clinton's emails, and it still wouldn't be as bad as what Trump is doing. And I think that's exactly right, because he is holding some of the most imperative American things inside of his residence there at Mar-a-Lago, and it's so willy-nilly. I mean, we literally posted a picture that came out as part of this indictment where he is. It is not that you can't make it up any other way. There are literally boxes of classified information that are stacked up in the bathroom, as well as several other rooms inside of his Mar-a-Lago residence. This is not a thing where it was like he was hiding them digitally on a cloud somewhere. He was literally holding physical documents somewhere in his home in Florida.
And we've known there have been operatives from other countries that just walk into Mar-a-Lago. It is a public resort, or a private resort, I guess, but it's a place where people come walking in and out. And as we make fun of Trump for being a child and wanting to have these things to show off, we need to be careful not to downplay the fact that other countries may not want to give us intel anymore, because particularly if Trump gets elected again, he blew the cover on an Israeli spy when he was president on television. People won't trust us anymore.
Yeah. We would have never gotten bin Laden like Obama did. And while and
Trump would have been like, we're going for someone big tonight.
Yeah, we're going for someone big tonight. He's in Afghanistan, or whatever. Like,
that's such a fair point.
Yeah, but I mean, and coincidentally, also Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State during that, and probably some of the most powerful pictures in the modern political time is the war room during that raid when the SEALs went and when the SEALs went and got Osama bin Laden. But here's a question I have for both of you. Do we really think, and you may have touched on this a little bit earlier, both of y'all, do we really think that this is a power move, or do we think that Trump is literally just a narcissist enough that he wants to hold those documents just to kind of like be the cool guy at the table and be like, guys, guess what I got in my bathroom? Like, the reading material is deep.
I don't know. I mean, I do think Trump is just a narcissist who just looks out for himself. And I don't think he likes being told what to do. So I could see, officials being like, hey, you got to turn those over. And him just being like, no, I don't. Like, who are you to, I was the freaking president. Like, who are you to tell me what I need to do? And
yeah.
But honestly, there's nothing about Donald Trump that has ever made sense in his entire presidency. Like, he has defied the odds, as much as I hate to say that, but he's had scandal after scandal and he says all the wrong things. And somehow other than losing the election, he's only won one election. So he's been indicted more than he's won elections. So let's remember that.
And he's never won the popular vote ever.
Yeah, right. But despite all that, he still has a very strong base. People that literally, I think the most honest thing Donald Trump has ever said was that he could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and he wouldn't lose any supporters. And I think that's fair, because like there's so much evidence on wrongdoing on his part and lying and even just what he was found liable in the sexual assault case just a few weeks ago, which hardly got any coverage in light of the classified documents. But
and now she's suing him again for what he said in the CNN town hall about her after he had been found liable.
Right. He defamed her immediately after. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's just wild to me. The thing that drives me the most mad, though, is I did a quick Facebook search today because I was like, I bet they're comparing Trump to Jesus. I bet they're doing it.
Yeah.
Which, the first indictment happened on Holy Week. So there are obviously a lot of them then.
Yeah, real easy.
But oh my gosh, there are so many still again today. Here's one random person that said, if anyone has ever felt what Jesus felt as he stood in front of Pilate and the Jewish officials, I believe it would be President Trump. An innocent man being charged with crimes he didn't commit and being betrayed by his own countrymen. And it's like, these people are writing novels on Facebook. That's just like one of many that just pop up. And all I searched was Jesus, Trump, persecution. And there's just hundreds of them.
I think Trump is a childish dumbass, and that's kind of the center of it all. But he's also still trying to prove himself worthy of his daddy's love. And I think he does that through attempts at wealth creation. And so remember, this is a guy who's very tight with the Saudis in the Live Golf tournament.
Yes.
The Live Golf tour. His son-in-law and daughter are making billions from the Saudis out of the work they did with the Saudis from the White House on taxpayer salaries. So there is a real possibility, and I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but there is a real possibility that he could have something in his chandeliered bathroom that the Saudis want, and he can give it to them for favor or for money, or money to be funneled through Ivanka. I mean, this is
Yes.
a real threat to America because of his relationship. And let's not forget, he had a very tight relationship with Putin and with Russia before he became president of the United States. This is a guy who has relationships with our enemies and is keeping classified documents in his house. So we can laugh about it, but there is a real and present danger in what he's doing.
There's been a downside, it was expressed as a downside that we continued to elect career politicians, quote unquote. But I think the danger is that we're seeing is that electing a businessman, as Trump was lauded to be, and that he would be so great for the economy, which, by the way, our unemployment rates are lower in the country than they have ever been in the history of the United States. And the Black unemployment rate is the lowest it has ever been in the history of the United States under President Biden. But, I think there's something to be said about these businessmen who have the bottom dollar as their interest, who already had international business worked up. And you're exactly right. He had a pre-existing relationship with Vladimir Putin. And whether you like that idea or not, the fact is that there is a very good chance that he is leaking classified information to Russia and certainly to the Saudis because of the money. And the more he gets sued, especially in civil cases, and he's shelling out millions to people in these civil cases. What the first one he was charged with like $2.5 million or something like that, a couple $1,000,000. So as that continues to happen, he's going to need to find more places that have dollars to lend him. And so many banks have quit giving him lines of credit because of his time as president, and even his business. They have cut off ties with him. So he is having to find unique ways to drum up funds, and it would not shock me in the least.
Let's not forget he declared bankruptcy 4 times.
Yes.
And there's even an interview with Eric Trump during the 2016 election saying they were now going to Russia for their lending because they were struggling to borrow. And I would love to see that interview come back. They couldn't borrow from American banks anymore. And so this is a guy who was doing the Miss Universe pageant in Moscow, was having dinner with Vlad. They were very tight. And so, again, I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but this is a person that has close ties to leaders of our enemies and is holding documents and lying about it, asking his attorneys to lie about it, having processes practiced where, okay, this is how we're going to move the documents if they come in. So this is funny because he's a doofus, but it's also not funny at the same time at all.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that Russia was found meddling in the 2016 election in favor of Trump. Like they wanted him to win.
In particularly on social media, right? Like they had a lot of bot work that was happening inside of Facebook and things like that, which obviously put Zuckerberg in a lot of hot water. But do we think, we continue to talk about him being a doofus, and I don't necessarily disagree, Paul, but do we think he's a doofus, or do we think he's just protecting his personal interest instead of the country's interest? And maybe both of those things are true, but yes. it seems like I don't know if he's stupid.
I think he's incredibly stupid. I think you just got to listen to him talk. I think he is an incredibly stupid human being, and having money does not mean you're smart. He is. I think maybe the only thing that saved us from him is that he is really not a bright man. I just personally believe it. Now, people say he graduated from Wharton, but again, money does amazing things when it comes to some of these things. I do not think I mean, just listen to him talk in a town hall at some point, and you're like, this is not a smart person.
Well, way that SNL impersonates him now with the new guy who does, I can't remember his name, but his impersonation of Trump is spot on. Where he literally, like, that's what Trump does. He just rambles and he just follows like little rabbit trails after rabbit trail. And he'll talk for 10 minutes straight and he gets from one place and you don't know how you end up to the other place. And it's so random. But I agree with you, Paul. Like, he does not speak like someone who has a high intellect.
But his base loves the rabbit trails. That's the problem.
And they believe he's playing like 3-level chess. His idioticness is all an act.
It's like it reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where George is actually not being an idiot at this point, but he's like intentionally trying to get fired from the Yankees, and he starts doing all these really stupid things and like destroying the trophy and doing but everybody that works there is like, oh my gosh, he's brilliant. And and he ends up getting like promoted but he was trying to get fired.
It's almost like, and not that I want to degrade an artist like Picasso or anything like that, but it is almost like that. Like, it's just nonsensical, but to them it's creating this illusion of greatness and depth of intelligence, and I just don't see it. And somebody in the chat mentioned earlier, Stephanie said, that's why I fear DeSantis. He's smart, and that's exactly right. But are people so enamored with Trump, and is the base so similar to Trump? And I draw what conclusion you may by me saying that, but is the base so similar to Trump that he is an untouchable force in the 2024 election unless the American justice system steps in? And, like we mentioned earlier, 20 to 25 years of federal jail time is up in the air right now for him. That is not impossible. He could very possibly face federal jail time.
I think the problem is, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, did I hear correctly, though, that even being in jail doesn't stop him from running and serving as president? We have no law that says
he could run the country from jail?
That's what people like. There is no law that says he can't run for office from prison.
That feels like an oversight.
That feels like an oversight. And also on top of that, there is no federal law on the books that says that you cannot run for office as someone who has committed a federal crime. In other words, you have charges against you that have been
hold on.
So
you can't vote if you have a felony.
That's exactly where I was going.
You can't vote. Yes.
But you could run for president with a felony.
You can run for office. You can run for federal office with a felony. You cannot vote with a felony.
That is so stupid.
Correct.
Who made that rule?
Amazing? And then there's a lot of argument that he could then pardon himself. He could get elected, pardon himself, and then get out of prison. And in fact, many believe a big reason he's running a second time is to try to protect himself from
make sure and pardon himself. Because what did they say? There's two other. There are two other indictments that could potentially be coming. Sorry,
Georgia,
April, I know Yeah, Georgia for sure. But April, what were you going to say?
Oh, I don't remember. But I think so. Could he pre-indict himself or pre-pardon himself for future charges if he hadn't been convicted yet?
That's a lawyer question. I do not know. I don't know if you can pardon yourself from something you haven't been convicted for.
Yeah, you can't pardon yourself for any crime I want to commit in the future. No, you can't do that.
But the current indictment, he hasn't been convicted yet, but he's been charged. Could he pardon himself for the charges without having the conviction?
Innocent until proven guilty is the law of the land. So he would be considered innocent of those charges and therefore would not need an indictment. You only need an indictment for something you have been found guilty of.
But I don't think he could pre-pardon himself.
So hypothetically, though, would they? Right. So I'm wondering, though, the chances of them getting through this trial before the 2024 election, pretty slim, because that would be moving quickly for a trial of this magnitude.
Yes.
So
any
worst case scenario, he gets elected president. Would they hold the trial while he's president, or would they postpone it? Because if he were to get convicted while president, he could just pardon himself.
Okay, wait. Can I just stop?
We need a lawyer. We need a lawyer on this show.
Could we ever imagine? Not only that we're going to have these conversations about somebody that is the favorite of one of our political parties for president, but the Christian party, the military loving party, the law and order party. What the law and order party, people? What I mean, do you guys? I mean, the idea that Christians are now like, oh, he had military secrets in his house. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if this was Barack Obama or Bill Clinton that had these things in a bathroom? People would be losing their ever-loving minds. But for Donald Trump, it's okay for him. What in the hell happened?
I can imagine it if it's Clinton, yes. Because first the country wasn't as divided as it was, and Clinton also served under a Democratic Congress, and also why he was not charged with his impeachment. With Barack Obama, 1000% would have had to pay the piper. And that can be for a number of reasons, not probably the most important reason, because he was a man of color. Like, let's just say what it is. I think that the Republicans would have jumped at anything they possibly could have found. And that's also another reason that I find it very impressive that no one has ever found anything to slander Barack or Michelle Obama with, other than the fact that they want to say that, that he didn't have a birth certificate, like as in the federal government didn't check him when he became a senator or something. And then that Michelle is actually a transgender woman or something, I mean, just all this crazy nonsense that they have just clearly very much made up. But
that Obama wore a tan suit that one time was like,
yes, that was like the biggest.
Didn't salute a soldier once, but let's
those were the scandals of the old days.
Yeah, so good. Remember those days
that Christians wanted Bill Clinton removed from office because he had an affair. Franklin Graham said he was disqualified from being president because he had an affair and his wife and daughter couldn't trust him anymore.
It was a little abusive of power too.
No, I know, but
yes.
But that is a direct quote from Franklin Graham: "Is if his wife can't trust him, how can the American people trust him?" Yet here we are with Donald Trump and doing this. And also, by the way, there were websites when Bill Clinton was president that showed all of the people Bill had murdered. I don't know if you remember this, but there were lists of people that Bill and Hillary had murdered to become president. So there was wackiness around Clinton too, and those same people are now like, Donald had secret documents. Well, that's because he's running the country from that bathroom over there with the military, All
right. Paid off a porn star, is on his third marriage.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, they've overlooked so many things that they have like crucified people for in the past.
Well, and I mean, it's like we mentioned just last week and probably a gazillion times ad nauseum before, the fact that the Access Hollywood tapes came out just weeks before the election and that didn't destroy his entire campaign in general is all you need to know, because that would have been criminalizing enough for evangelicals in the past to say this is not a man of moral character, but they have sold their morals down the road for political power.
Yep, 100%.
Well, and that's Mike Pence saying anything negative about Donald Trump rings so hollow for me now, because he gave him cover for 4 years with evangelicals for 4.5 years. And now to be like, well, he shouldn't be president. I just want to say, go screw yourself, Mike, because you should have said something while you were in the seat if you had any testicles whatsoever. But he gave those to Mother. She has them in her purse.
Well, look what happened to him. They were calling for his head. Someone literally brought a noose, put it together, and had Mike Pence on it.
Yep. Yeah. They constructed an entire gallows. And now he is running, but he's calling out Trump only for election and January 6th things. He is lauding Trump in other spaces. And so he still doesn't have an even hand. And even talking about those Access Hollywood tapes, he went radio silent. And a lot of people don't remember, he went radio silent for about 2 weeks. Following the Access Hollywood, he quit going on campaign stops, everything like that. Like, it was a big deal that he was not alongside the nominee for their party, and him being the guy on the bottom of the ticket. He went radio silent for 2 weeks, and the story coming out of his camp is he was debating on whether or not he should continue with Trump because of the audio that came out of those Access Hollywood tapes. And all you need to know about Mike Pence is he came right back and stuck with him for 4 years while they turned cabinet members over like hotcakes. I mean, it was there is a grand total, I think, of like 2 cabinet members or staff members in general that made it through the entire Trump presidency. People were quitting left and right because of the nonsense that Trump was doing. Mike Pence stuck it out the whole way. And actually did not ever say that they should impeach and convict Donald Trump even after January 6th, when they called for him to be hanged. And so that's enough.
I have a theory. This is me being a little conspiracy-ish, whatever the word is. But I wonder if Trump just has dirt on all these guys. Like, look how Ted Cruz... Sure.
That could be what's in the boxes. Yeah.
He went so hard against Ted Cruz's wife, against Ted Cruz's dad, to where Ted Cruz actually got up at the 2016 Republican convention and would not endorse Trump. Said, vote your conscience. It was like the only time that Ted Cruz ever had balls. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And then immediately he's been sucking up to Trump ever since. Same thing with Lindsey Graham. Like, there's been moments where Lindsey Graham will like have a hint of integrity and will stand up to Trump before he immediately just takes it back. And I think he must just have dirt on all these guys. I cannot imagine why else. Like, people that have shown that they actually know the difference between right and wrong at times, but then go right back to doing the wrong thing.
Let's not forget that the first guy to give Trump cover was Jerry Falwell Jr. And Michael Cohen was fixing the pool boy story at that time. So I have no doubt in my mind that Cohen leaned on Jerry Falwell Jr. to come out and give cover to Donald on that. And let's also not forget that right after the P tape came out, grabbed the P tape, then Jim Comey comes out and says, yes, we're investigating Hillary's email. And truly, if it had not been for Comey, I think Hillary still wins the election, or Senator or Secretary Clinton still wins that election. And that also gave a lot of cover to Trump. But the question is, how did we get here? Really, how do you guys think a Christian, a person that claims to be a follower of Christ, can not only like vote for Trump, like hold their nose and vote for Trump, but sit here today and say, I don't care that he had classified nuclear secrets in his house. How did we get to that place where they have to not only defend him, but like celebrate him at all costs?
Well, I think that is a very heavy, deep question that goes back years in preparation for this. And it's really the rise of Christian nationalism that's always been here, where you mix your faith in Christianity with republicanism. When evangelicals married the GOP, with Billy Graham's help back in the 50s, it's just been an increasing rise of power. And I think the more powerful evangelicals realize that they could be and that have their influence on society, the harder it is to let that go. And so I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors that go all the way back to the beginning of this country with, white supremacy is rooted into it, because white supremacy, the patriarchy, and Christian nationalism are all three peas in a pod. They're all connected, so it's hard to really separate them. But yeah, I just feel like it's been a slow turn of the dial. One day you're in church, you hear your pastor saying, make sure you vote for the pro-life candidate. And then they're saying, make sure you vote for the Republican candidate. And then they say, make sure you vote for Donald Trump. It's just like slowly turning up to where, oh, you don't see anything wrong with this because this is just what reality is in your church everywhere.
Yeah. I don't think it's, yes, there is a very long road that got us here, but I think the election of Barack Obama pointed to the fall of power from American Christians, in particular, white American evangelicals. And with that, there was a recluse, and the three of us were all in conversations and in circles then that began levying illegitimate concerns about Barack Obama. And now that we step back and we take the 30,000 foot view, what we realize is that obviously those were very misguided, very racist. But I think what really happened is that they saw their power slipping. And so it didn't matter who they had to put forward to keep the power. They just wanted to keep the power. That's all that mattered. And so, white American evangelicals had always had exactly what they wanted. They had people of color in the box that they wanted them to be in. They had women in the box that they wanted them to be in. And so once they saw that begin to fall apart, it was just clutch for the nearest thing. They were just grabbing at things, and Trump happened to be the biggest thing in the air that they took a hold of. And so it's a power,
and we know what they were grabbing at. Sorry, Jim. They were grabbing at things. All right. Just ask Trump.
Well, I also think there's something about Trump's personality. Like, Trump is a bulldog. He was going to get in there and fight for them in a way, like, and do whatever it took, and say the things that no one else would say, and made them feel special in a way. He was like, it is hard to be a white man in this country, say that, like, and made all the white men who felt like they were losing their power suddenly like, yeah, it is hard to be me. And they looked at themselves in the mirror. They saw themselves in Trump. And I also think there's something for Christians who in church are told to turn the other cheek, to lay your weapons down, to be meek, to be mild, because those are the teachings of Jesus. But hey, we could vote for this man and he can do our dirty work for us, but it's not us doing it. But we can cheer him on to get us all these rights and keep us in power.
I think if we're honest, though, the things that we were taught in Sunday school were never actually the pillars of American Christianity. We were taught things as kids: to turn the other cheek, to lay your weapons down, to be peaceably among men. Like, we were taught all of those things.
Right.
But in that process, the white American evangelical was never going to lose their power. And so it's really easy to teach your kids those things, to be nice among each other. But then when it comes to adulthood, Christianity has been what it's been. In America, the Bible has been used to defend the darkest parts of American history at every single turn. There has not been a turn in American history where the Bible has not been used to defend the biggest and worst issues that we are about. Like, it was used to defend slavery. It was used to defend misogyny. It was used to defend segregation. It was used to defend the anti-Islamic movement. It was used for those things. But when it became unsettled and that power could actually fall, that's when they began to speak out and say the quiet part out loud. They didn't have to say the quiet part out loud before, because the big thing was never at risk. And now all of a sudden it was at risk. We have a black man in the White House. He's empowering women. He has now come out because even in 2008, Barack Obama and Joe Biden both said that they believed that marriage was between a man and a woman. In debates in the 2008 election, they both said it. You can go back and find it. So all of a sudden, when the administration for Obama began to make changes to empower and give civil unions to LGBTQIA plus couples and things like that, that's when the American evangelical, the white American evangelical, began to feel their power slipping away. And so then they could no longer fly under this rainbows and fairy dust or whatever. They had to say the quiet part out loud. And that's what got us here.
Mm.
I think I agree in a lot of ways, but when I was a kid, yes, they taught us turn the other cheek, and then we sang Onward Christian Soldiers. And then we celebrated, we kicked the British ass, on July 4th, yes, American power overturned Hitler, we're fighting communism. So the message was of American exceptionalism, American power, how we made the world right with our military. I mean, we celebrated 4th of July, Veterans Day, Memorial Day in our church services.
In the churches, yes.
And we were taught that America was great and we were keeping the world godly. And we were sending our missionaries and converting the world. And so I do think and we were constantly taught that in the last days, we're going to be oppressed, we're going to be beheaded. And so I think all of that really built a space where it's pretty easy for somebody to start to say, like you say, oh, a black man is president now, and he doesn't love the country like we do. He doesn't love the military like we do. And people are very then easily motivated and activated to say, and I think then Trump comes along and it's like, oh yeah, that's what we need is an asshole. Like King David was, he was a poet, but he also was an asshole, and he would kill a man to get his wife, and that's who we want to lead us, a mighty man. And so I think all of it played together with how we were taught for decades about America, about power, and about how power sets things right, rule of law, death penalty. All of these things say violence creates peace, violence creates order. And so I think it was pretty easy for Christians then to say, yeah, give us an asshole that's on our side so that we can win.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, so much of American history is being pro-violent. Like and we celebrated it. We thought, I remember being taught that God blessed America and like supernaturally helped us to win wars and kill more people on the other side. So there's definitely this like underlying violence within an American Christian faith.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about early American history, you could make an argument for the need of military power, separating from England in the Revolution and the War of 1812, even onto the Civil War, which a lot of people misunderstand. Yes, Lincoln was anti-slavery, but he was even quoted at times quietly in rooms, and there's debate among scholars about whether or not he was willing to kind of seed slavery in a way, just to keep the American establishment going, because he knew that the factories in the North could not continue without the products of the South. And so, a lot of people want to point at Lincoln and say, well, Lincoln was this, abolitionist, and that he wanted to keep the Union together, but he wanted it to be a free country for all. That is even debatable in some spaces, but even taking that on its face, you look at early American history up to 1865, you can see the need for military, but up after that point, what are we talking about? We got involved in wars at times when it was unnecessary. I mean, we didn't jump into World War II until we were bombed at Pearl Harbor. We didn't decide to go stand next to the Allied forces to push back the Nazi regime until we got brought into it. Korea, Vietnam, there was no reason for us to get involved in those conflicts, other than the fact that we just wanted to go empower people to be just like us because we're so amazing. And so, anything on past that almost feels as though that America thought they were better than everybody else, and they wanted to empower people to this Christian nationalism, which is exactly where we are now. So I think when we enter into the 20th century, and certainly into the 21st century, it is simply about American dominance, point blank, period. We outrank the next 40 other countries in military spending by a landslide. It is the only thing that we are number one in the world in. It is the only thing that we are number one in the world in. Not reading, not science, not mathematics. We are number one in the world in military spending.
I have to disagree with that. We are by far number one in privately owned weapons. By far, we own about 42% of all the world's privately owned guns,
which is kind of in the same vein.
Yes, and I agree. And I don't. Yes, I don't disagree, but I think it's in that same thought process of
same genre.
Yeah. Well, but it's the folks who own all these weapons who think, well, I have to hold these weapons in case one day I have to fight back against my government. Right.
Yeah.
Which is government that's the number one military in the world.
Yeah.
That guy's drones.
And I want to piggyback on that point, because yes, I understand why somebody could say we needed military in the Revolutionary War, but I think you could also argue, and particularly against Jesus' teachings, as you look at Canada, Australia, New Zealand, these are all countries that were a part of the British Empire that became free countries without a war. They didn't have to fight a war for their independence. We did. Why? There's a lot of evidence. It had a lot to do with money and wealthy men wanting us not to have to pay taxes to the Brits anymore. And then it turned into something. So I think that we could make an argument that that is our history. It's what we've been taught. We had, they were evil. We were great. We had to go kick their ass. God intervened, and God looked a lot like the French. But I think we don't take a lot of time to sit and say, other countries didn't have to fight for their freedom, so why did we?
Guns and ships, baby, guns and ships from France. But anybody love Hamilton out there? But I think that part of that is true. But you also look at the oppression that was also being done, that a lot of those men knew were happening under British rule. You think about places like India and African countries that were under British rule as well, and being tyrannized by British rule. I all of that to say, I think that there is a debate there. Not that we did the right thing, or that, that the way we teach American history now is 100% correct, but at least it was worth a conversation to go, should we try to free ourselves from this empire? I think that that's fair. And also to put yourself in historical context, like a lot of people during that time in the 1700s were like, this is now me, this is my land, we're going to create our own country. So I think that there's some legitimacy in that way to discuss it. Now, again, not saying it's right, but just saying it's probably worth more of a debate. But why are we in Vietnam?
But let me say though, because we have celebrated getting our independence by violence under under God's watchful eye and helping hand, we have been a country that has celebrated violence as a way to freedom forever. And yes, so of course we're like, gotta have my Second Amendment gun because that's how God keeps us free, is by all of us having guns. I think that has sown violence into the very fabric of our culture and into our Christianity.
There's no doubt.
I agree. All right, I'm gonna throw us to a quick mid-roll and we'll come back for a quick last segment. Something like that.
That was good.
Loving evangelicalish? Follow us to catch all the latest content and encouragement. You can check us out on TikTok by following @evangelicalish or subscribe on YouTube by searching evangelicalish. That's evangelical with an ISH. And don't forget to catch our live streams each and every single Wednesday night on YouTube at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 Pacific. And now back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
Welcome back into the podcast. We're so grateful that you are spending some time listening to Evangelicalish, whether you're doing it live on Wednesday night, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 7 Mountain Time, 6 Pacific. We don't want to leave our friends out there in Utah and New Mexico. We love you, Wyoming. But we're super grateful, however you're listening, that you are listening. And we want you to add to the conversation. Go ahead and come join us on Facebook, on our private Facebook group. You can just search Evangelicalish on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group. There's a couple of questions. We just want you to agree that you're going to be kind and compassionate in the comments and have good dialogue in those spaces. And so answer those questions, join the group there on Facebook. There's some really great conversation and some posts that happen in there from the Ish community all over the country and all over the world, honestly. So we want you to join that.
Your boys in the Southern Baptist Conference are pretty pissed, Jeremy. What they do not like women. They do not like women to be in charge. What in the hell is going on with the Southern Baptists kicking out churches with women leaders, including Rick Warren's church back in February, and now 2 more today.
They are losing so many members. Like the SBC is going downhill. Like they've lost lots of with the abuse scandals. You would think like Rick Warren is a huge church, maybe one of the largest churches in the SBC. He wanted to stay. He was willing to make it work. And they kicked him out anyway. Why would they kick out one of the largest churches when they're going downhill? They just hate women that much.
Yeah. So membership in the Southern Baptist Convention was down by nearly 500,000 members in 2022, according to a recently released denomination report. And the SBC had 13.2 million members in 2022, down from 13.68 million in 2021. So losing over 500,000 members just in a year.
It's still the largest, right? It's the largest Protestant.
I believe so, but golly, like after this week and the annual meeting that's happening right now, I think new numbers are going to have to come out and we're going to have to find out. But it started with Rick Warren, and they were ordaining women, not into the lead pastor role, mind you, but into sub-pastor roles, community pastors, women's pastors, things like that. But they were ordaining them to the title of pastor. And the SBC decided to cut ties with Saddleback, which is, obviously you talk about the late 90s, early 2000s, and the purpose-driven life, the purpose-driven church by Rick Warren. Those are some of the staples inside of conservative Christianity, just in general, not the SBC. But now we have come to a place where they have disassociated with Saddleback, as well as 2 other churches that the messengers, as they're called, inside of the annual meeting.
It sounds very culty.
It is very culty. Don't worry, it's a cult. Been there, done that. It's a cult. Got the shirt and everything. But they have disassociated with 2 other churches as well. In the process of the meetings this week because of the ordination of pastors. None of those churches have ordained women as lead pastors in those roles. They have only had sub-pastors, in other words, pastoral staff that are supporting to the senior pastor role. But those churches have been disassociated with by the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Southern Baptist Convention is withering up and dying constantly. And I don't think it's any surprise that this comes also on the heels of the fact that they were exposed with a private list that was not published, not made public, about 700 abuse victims and their abusers, and some of those abusers being hired in other churches. And that was just this past year. So 500,000 people just in this past year, and they have been down the last decade as well.
They just keep making terrible decisions. But like that goes from the beginning, because the SBC was founded because they split from the Baptist,
the American Baptist,
the large Baptist church, right? They split because they wanted to enslave people.
They won't teach you that in Baptist seminary, trust me.
Oh, they didn't teach you that part?
No, they didn't say that out loud.
And I heard them, they're saying the Bible says that a woman cannot hold the office of pastor. The Bible says no such thing. In fact, the office of pastor is only mentioned once ever in all the Bible, and it says nothing about male or female, and pastor is actually it's fourth among the 5 offices of the church, if you think that Paul's writing about the offices there. So it's a made up thing. It's a made up thing. They take the women be silent in the church, but to say the Bible says a woman can't be a pastor, the Bible says no such thing. And Jesus had women who were highly placed with him in his ministry. Paul had female apostles. Paul had women delivering messages and reading the letters in the churches. These guys did not limit women from leadership in the church. And it is a completely made up construct from misogynistic men that somehow think men are leaders and women are supposed to be down in the fellowship hall making, the food for the potluck afterward.
Nasty ass casseroles. But yeah, go ahead.
I just think one of the saddest things, I've seen some women on Twitter that are SBC that are cheering this on because it's biblical, and that just, it makes me so sad that that they're almost cheering and celebrating their own oppression, that they're so indoctrinated and so in it that they don't think they're as worthy as a man to lead a church if God were to call them to that. And I heard some snippets of the debates that were happening of these men that were pleading their case on why, they should or should not kick out Saddleback, why women should or should not be allowed to be pastors. And I was just thinking of the little girl, if there were little girls in that room and the women that were in that room hearing men debate their worth. I've had men countless times use 2 Timothy against me if I say something that they don't like, just to shut me up. Well, the Bible says you need to be quiet. Well, the Bible says you can't speak to me like that because I'm a man. And and it goes to these extremes. Like we talked about Shiny Happy People with Bill Gothard, where basically the oldest man in the room is the one who has the authority in the room. I don't know how to explain what that does to your psyche, that just because I have a vagina, I'm automatically disqualified from everybody who has a penis. It's so stupid when you say it out loud, but it's also very dehumanizing. And I am only what my genitals are.
Well, and one of the lines from the Shiny Happy People documentary was a man saying his daughter shouldn't take any more math than algebra because she needs algebra for cooking and for using recipes, but otherwise she doesn't need any math.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's sick and it's dehumanizing, and it's not biblical in the slightest.
No, and they lean so hard into the passage that it's Paul writes that a pastor is supposed to be the man of one woman, or the husband to one wife, or whatever. It is so misconstrued, so mistranslated. It is used to just completely neglect the callings and the ability and the the empowerment of so many women that are amongst us inside of churches, it's sad. And it's kind of like how people use the passage that Jesus spoke when he said that a man is to leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, when he's speaking to a crowd. And so they use that and they're like, well, see, Jesus did talk about homosexuality. No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
He was talking about divorce.
Yeah, he's talking about divorce. And so you are taking this completely out of context. And what Paul is doing is he is in the middle of Roman rule. In other words, polygamy was a huge deal inside of that culture. Polygamy was huge. And so what he's saying really there is the spouse of one spouse, somebody who is committed to another individual and doing life together in that space. That's really what he's saying there. And that can even be discussed as far as, it being cultural context and those kinds of things, just like anything else that Paul wrote, because let's be honest, Paul was a Christian murderer and just had this moment where he decided to follow Jesus or whatever. So his misogyny, his homophobia are obviously on display through his writings. And so even that can be pulled into cultural and historical context, but he's not saying literally men who are married to one woman. He's just saying somebody who is committed to one other individual, and you don't even have to take that on its face. So it's not healthy. It's not safe. And Paul, you're exactly right. It is not 100% ever mentioned in the Bible. And Paul actually spends time in Romans talking about how Phoebe is an elder and a church leader, and she is a woman. He talks about oh gosh, I just went brain dead. Help me.
This is your Rick Perry moment.
Sorry, that third one there. I don't remember that third one there.
Priscilla
and Aquila.
Yeah.
He mentions the woman first, which is actually culturally backwards. And because the thought is that Priscilla is actually doing more of the ministry, right, and is the forward-facing person inside of that couple that is building the church or building the local believers. And so, Paul,
and that passage about Phoebe being a deaconess, she's actually an apostle, and that's
yes,
a change. That's a change in the Bible in English translation. And even the one man, one wife thing is an overseer, not a pastor. It's more of a deacon.
Right.
Those are rules for deacons, not pastors. So we are to say the Bible says the office of pastor must be male. It does not say that. That is twisting, cherry picking, making the Bible say what you want it to say, and it's ridiculous. And I think the women silent in the church passage is clearly, it doesn't take even a deep study to see Paul is talking about a specific group of women that are causing a specific issue in a specific church. And he's saying those women need to shut their mouths because they are out of line. It's not all women for all of history.
The first resurrection message is preached by women who had the cojones, had the balls to go to the tomb, while the rest of the disciples were in hiding because they were scaredy cats, because they figured they were next. The women went to the tomb to worship Jesus one more time, and they were fortunate and blessed to be able to be at the resurrection. And for me, the deconstruction, whatever, I still believe that is something very powerful inside of Scripture. But April, I just want to pose you this question, and I think what you said earlier was so powerful.
Let me jump in real quick and say it is about genitalia, April, see, because he's saying the women had the balls to go to the tomb. So it is about genitalia.
Maybe that's not a great. You used that phrase earlier, and maybe that's why it was in my head.
No, it works.
Yeah. They had intestinal fortitude. Maybe that's what we should say. But gender neutral power. But April, I do want to ask you this question. When you see these things, when you get the DMs that Paul and I clearly do not get, because we very much present as cishet males in our social media presence. How does that make you feel? And do you ever grow weary of having to battle that, or has it just become a thing where you just push it aside and continue to press ahead? Because I think you're making a huge difference for the kingdom, as it were, or whatever evangelical phrase.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I mean, it definitely used to bother me a lot more when I felt like I needed to defend myself, and use scripture to do it, and I felt like I was doing it alone. And then I felt like I was falling on deaf ears. Um, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, I can kind of someone that's going to quote Second Timothy to me is not someone worthy of having a conversation with. I feel at this point, if they're going to dismiss me just because of my, what I've
Boobs.
got going on down there. Yeah. And my boobs.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah. Whatever. But yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a toll. I mean, it's disheartening after, to see it hurts my heart more for just the women that I know are still in those spaces that are very oppressive and very much like your main role in life is to submit to a godly man someday. I think mutual submission with a partner is great where you are equal in a relationship, but where it's so lopsided and the man is, the quote unquote head and you have that umbrella thing. Like my heart goes out to that because I was able to get out. So it doesn't bother me as much now because I see it for the hogwash that it is.
Sure.
But it does hurt knowing how many women are trapped in those spaces who really don't believe much of themselves because of what the church tells them.
What did it take? I think Paul got raptured. He just texted us and was like, internet's not good.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no. What did it take for you? Because there may be women out there listening quietly in their AirPods against their husband's will or whatever the case is, right? What did it take for you? And I know Beecher has been an incredible supporting spouse and, we're grateful for them, but what has it taken for you to walk through that journey? What were some of the big steps for you to see past some of that indoctrination?
Well, I think I had a little bit of a head start because even though I had a lot of like misogyny and complementarianism around me, we were Pentecostal, so we weren't SBC, and my dad was very feminist when it came to me. Like my parents had a very traditional marriage where my dad was definitely the head and my mom pretty much submitted to him. Like that was what I saw. But my dad would tell me, like, I'm like one of his early advice would be like, April, whatever you do, get your career started first before you marry a man so you don't play second fiddle to him. And was just very much like telling me like I could do whatever I wanted. He told me I could be a pastor if I wanted, that I could be a preacher if I wanted. So I felt very empowered at home, even when the church didn't necessarily empower me. So I kind of lived with this constant, I don't know, like conflict between the larger evangelical world and then what I got at home. But I listened to my dad more than I listened to the other pastors. So, but that's not really helpful for other people. I would just say that, deep down what you are capable of. And a man can't tell you what you can and cannot do.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, yourself better than anybody. And like, I knew within my heart of hearts that it was stupid that I couldn't do something just because I didn't have a penis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm on this basketball scholarship in college, so I can do what I want. Yeah. I love that. I love this for you. It is so important. And I think something that you said there is also really important in the sense of, if there are dads listening out there that have young girls, to be able to take that and go, okay, I need to be empowering my girls now. Like I need to be building them up to be really good, strong, independent, and fierce women now. I think that there's still validity in that. Like, even though that circumstance may be a little bit different than what a lot of women have experienced inside of like fundamentalist evangelicalism or whatever. When did you finally feel comfortable enough to start allowing your voice to be not just heard, but when did you feel comfortable enough to allow your voice to be out front, like to say the hard things, to say the stuff that wasn't going to be popular in the room?
Oh gosh. I mean, always. I was just on the Republican side before. So I had, I made enemies back then. But I do think
Sure.
my origin story, I was in a debate class in college and at a Baptist college. And I got
Yeah, you
voted
were.
I got voted most likely to win every argument with her husband as like a little superlative that they gave
I
at the
love
end.
it.
And so I posted it on Facebook, and wouldn't you know it, the first comment was 2 Timothy by a Theo bro from my old youth group. I was like, this mother effer. Although I
Yeah.
didn't say that, but I was like, nope, not dealing with that. I had time that day. So that turned into like almost 200 comments on my personal Facebook in like 2005 or 2000. That was like 2008. So this was like before you had 100 comments on a post.
Yeah, pre-influencer April.
Yes, and like people were piling. I mean, to be fair, we were all against. Like it was like 1 against 10. People were piling on this guy. He had no shot. At the end, he literally was just like, "April, erase me now forever," because he was pulling out his hair because I was just like, "No, you're not. You're gonna eat this. I'm gonna shove this back down your throat."
Yeah. Well,
so, and that day, an ex-evangelical was born, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I was born in the darkness.
I was like, you're not going to tell me to shut up on my page.
Yeah, I was born in the darkness. Yeah, that's so good. No, I love that. I love that. Does it feel like, because some days I feel like we have taken major, not just steps backwards, but like leaps backwards, because I remember my parents, and even though we grew up Southern Baptist and very fundamentalist, like I remember my parents empowering my sister to be, strong and independent and fierce and all of those things. So I think we have that similarly in common. But I don't know if I can grade if it's always been that way or if we're taking leaps backwards just because of my privilege. And so I probably don't have the right to say one way or the other. But to you, does it feel like we are taking major steps backwards for women inside of evangelicalism?
I think the SBC and there's certain sects of evangelicalism that are trying really, really hard. But I think kind of it's the same thing as you mentioned earlier, how Christianity as a whole, when they saw they were losing power, it's almost like a last ditch effort to really grab hold and try to take it back all of a sudden and fight extra hard. I think it's why you see all these anti-LGBTQ bills being passed too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a last ditch effort because they see they're losing the culture war. I think you see places like SBC's never empowered women. So it's not like they're going backwards. They're just refusing to go forward.
Yeah. I mean, but to an extent, like I think up until even, because this is not, Saddleback didn't just begin ordaining women just in the last year. Like this has been a thing they've been doing for a while, as well as those couple of other churches that they disassociated with in the last, week or whatever. I feel like, yes, what you're saying is true, that the SBC has never empowered women. But I think even for the minority that was, they are reclaiming, or at least trying to quote unquote reclaim their dominance over women in these past couple of years. Whereas before it was like, it was almost like don't ask, don't tell. Like we'll have women that are empowered inside of our churches, but like whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think they're taking a hard stand on women because that's the easier one they can currently, where they're losing power. They're losing power in the queer issues too. And, and with, they're losing the culture war. So what I see right now are a bunch of old white men trying to dig their heels in and be like, no, I'm not going to give it up, and try to stand there for as long as possible. But I'm more hopeful than not. I think it's going to get a lot uglier before it gets better. But I still think overall it's one of the best times to be alive in America if you're trans or a woman, or like, think about like 50 years ago, it was way worse to be
Sure.
in a marginalized group. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. I think they're trying to pull us back, but I do believe it's a last ditch effort that will get uglier before it gets better, but it will get better. That's my hope anyway.
Do you feel safe with your voice so public at this point? You know, I mean, obviously you've got, I mean, I don't know, 300, 400,000 followers on TikTok, 100,000 followers on Instagram. You're working on a book. Like, I mean, you're doing all of these really big things. Do you feel safe being kind of a front voice inside of these spaces?
Depends on the day. I mean, it's definitely scary sometimes, and I'm trying to keep certain things private because there's some scary people out there. But overall, I feel safe enough, or I wouldn't be doing it. You know, like, I feel like the risks are worth it. But yeah, there's crazy people out there, and with an election coming up, it's probably just going to get crazier, as you know, because you've received threats and all that as
Yes,
well.
the unalive threats are very real. But I think I still understand that, and this is something I talked about in my speech in Washington this week, was that it would be really easy for me to just fade back into acceptance. Like, if I just shut down my social media platforms and quit speaking out, like I could just lean into my privilege and be done. Like, I'm not so sure that you can do the same. Like, I think that even if you were to stop everything tomorrow, you're still a woman in America, where a lot of places are still trying to legislate how your body is used and things like that. I mean, you know, you're talking about anti-abortion bills and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, this is my last question, and this has just become an April interview, I guess, which I'm super grateful for, because I think your voice needs to be heard on this. At the end of the day, is the cost, even if it gets really hard, is the cost worth it?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and also, I am a woman, but I'm a white woman, so I still have a lot of privilege in this country. And I think what makes it more worth it now is my spouse. You know, I'm married to a trans non-binary person. I can't go back. Like, our existence is, I don't know what the word is, but I just, you know, we're not going back in the closet. You know, and I can't, like, we've tasted freedom, so I'm not going backwards, and I'm not going to stop fighting for the people that are out now and are still in the closet and haven't come out yet, because freedom is worth it.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, if we're not willing to let our privilege down and let it cost us some things, you know, our allyship cost us some things for people that we love and care about, whether that be in the queer community, whether that be in the BIPOC community, whatever the case is for marginalized people and communities in our country. If we're not willing to let it cost us, then we're not really allies. And so I love what you're saying, and I commend what you're doing, because I realize it's harder than what I do. Because I don't have people telling me I shouldn't be a pastor just because of my genitalia. I have people telling me I shouldn't be a pastor because of my theology or whatever, but that's so much less credible and so much less like individual, right? Like, it's not a part of who I am as a physical being. And so I just love what you're doing. And I you know, I mean, from day one, I've always been so proud and just respected the things that you do. And I'm, I want your voice to be as loud as possible because it matters.
Jeremy, you're going to make me cry. This was not planned.
No, it was not planned. Paul got raptured. He texted and said, for those of you who were like, why does Jeremy keep looking down? I was checking with Paul to see if he could make it back. He said, he's been raptured tonight.
We've been talking for like an hour and a half almost now.
Yeah. So Paul's been raptured. My big thing tonight, and even though I'm somebody from the SBC space, I don't really think this is about me. I think this is more about you and how it resonates with you as a woman, and someone who has to deal with that direct discrimination. And so I really wanted to hear your heart on that. I appreciate you sharing your heart on that. And again, I think that the ministry that you're doing is greater than anything you could have ever even thought or dreamed of when we were conservative and evangelical and all of those things. I think you're making a huge difference in our culture and in our communities. And I know the Ish community is super grateful for you, but I know that there are hundreds of thousands of other people that are grateful for you. And I just love hearing your heart, and I want you to continue to fight. And we've got your back. So we're here to throw them hands with you.
Yeah, we'll throw hands. I got y'all back too.
Try Jesus, don't try.
Well, I won't actually throw hands because I'm a pretty peaceful person.
Yeah, you are a very peaceful person.
I will make fun of you in a TikTok with a wig on.
Yes, you sure will. Oh man. Anything else? Any other final thoughts on that topic before we kind of wrap up tonight? I know we've gone long, and Paul is.
I think we should save what we were going to do for the end for next week.
Yes, I
Paul
agree.
Can be here. And Mike Mashiro, we're having him on next week too.
Yeah, Mike Mashiro is going to join us. Queer pastor, and super excited about the work that he's doing. If you haven't had a chance to go follow him on Instagram. It's just his name, Mike Mashiro on Instagram. Super easy to find. Really great follow. Post some really, really great content, some thought-provoking content. So go check that out on Instagram. I hated that Paul was raptured, but any other final thoughts before we close out, April?
Thank God for modern medicine, because strep throat sucks.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. Super grateful for steroids and antibiotics.
Yes.
All right. Super thankful for each and every single one of you who took the time to be with us live. You can be with us live on Wednesday nights, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 6 Pacific, right here on the Evangelicalish YouTube channel. Just search us on YouTube. We're super easy to find. Evangelical-ish. That's evangelical with an ISH. And so you can find us on every single social media platform. Come join us on the private Facebook group, and then join the Ish community, $4.99 a month. On evangelicalish.com. All right. A really great conversation tonight talking about Trump, his indictment, the power of Christianity, evangelicals inside of our country, the SBC. For Paul and April, I'm Jeremy. Thank you so much. We're super grateful for each and every single one of you. Until next week, have a good night.